Hi, everyone. I'm Steve Colino, and before we begin, I want to be clear that these are confidential remarks. What I'm sharing today is intended solely for this audience and reflects real world experience and decision patterns I see every day in high stakes real estate situations. Now, when most people think about a major financial decision, especially buying or selling a home, they believe they're making a rational, well researched choice, one grounded in facts, data, and careful analysis. And on the surface, that's true. But what this image introduces is a more important idea, that the choice you think you're making is only a small part of what's actually happening. The most powerful forces shaping your decision sit below the surface, out of view but very much in control, long before logic ever weighs in. When we enter a real estate decision, we tell ourselves a very reassuring story. We focus on price analysis. We study market trends. We compare square footage, locations, and features. We build spreadsheets. We check boxes. This is the part of the iceberg we're comfortable with. These are the variables we can explain to ourselves and to others. They make us feel disciplined, informed, and in control. And to be clear, this work matters. These factors are real. They're necessary, but they're not sufficient. Because what we rarely question is whether these visible criteria are actually driving the decision, or whether they're simply being used to justify something that's already been decided at a deeper level. Beneath conscious analysis lies a far more powerful system at work. A system built from cognitive bias, emotional response, environmental pressure, and mental shortcuts. This is where the real decision is made. Long before we believe we're evaluating options, our brain is already filtering information. It's deciding what feels safe, what feels risky, and what feels right. Logic doesn't lead this process. It follows it. The goal here isn't to remove these forces. That's impossible. The goal is to illuminate them, because once you can see the hidden 90%, you stop mistaking confidence for clarity. Most of us genuinely believe we weigh information fairly, that we assess all inputs evenly and let the best argument win. But the brain isn't wired for accuracy, it's wired for efficiency. The first impression, whether it's a price, a feeling, or a gut reaction, sets the anchor. Everything that follows is quietly measured against it. Data that supports that anchor feels credible. Data that challenges it feels inconvenient, or overly complicated, or easy to dismiss. So while we think we're weighing facts, we're often just protecting an early conclusion. Not intentionally, automatically. Here's the subtle shift that happens next. We stop seeing a property as a structure, and we start seeing it as a story. A story about who will be there, how life will feel, what this decision says about us. Once that emotional narrative forms, the mind goes to work defending it. We search for validation. We minimize contradictions. We explain away red flags. It's not that we ignore facts, it's that we recruit them to serve the story we want to be true. Now layer in the environment itself. High stakes, tight timelines, competitive pressure. Stress doesn't sharpen thinking, it narrows it. Under pressure, the brain looks for relief. It favors speed over depth, certainty over exploration, instinct over analysis. And the more compressed the timeline, the more aggressively the mind reaches for shortcuts, because clarity feels urgent, even when it's incomplete. We like to believe pressure brings out our best thinking. In reality, it often shuts it down. High stress pushes the brain out of its executive function, the part responsible for long-term thinking and complex trade-offs, and into a reactive mode. Problems get simplified, options collapse, the goal becomes resolution, not optimization. Under pressure, the fastest answer often feels like the smartest one, even when it isn't. When uncertainty peaks and mental bandwidth drops, something else happens. We stop seeking advice and start seeking certainty. This is where trust transfer occurs. The weight of the decision quietly shifts to the person who sounds most confident, most certain, most decisive. Their conviction becomes a substitute for our own analysis. It doesn't feel like giving up control. It feels like relief. But at that moment, who we trust becomes more influential than what we know. By the time a final decision is made, it's rarely the result of a single moment or factor. It's forged beneath the surface, shaped by psychological shortcuts, intensified by stress and time pressure, and guided by the weight of transferred trust. The visible logic at the top of the iceberg explains the decision, but it doesn't create it. Understanding this system doesn't make decisions easier, it makes them clearer. And clarity is the real advantage. You analyze the property, you study the market, you scrutinize the price, but the most influential factor isn't any of those. It's the mind you trust to navigate the 90% you can't see. So the real question isn't whether you're making a smart decision. It's who you're allowing to guide it. When clarity is hardest, pressure is highest, and consequences matter most. That choice, more than any metric, shapes the outcome. Thank you. This has been Confidential Remarks. Confidential.